Spring ball has barely even started, and Utah already has a player in the portal. What does it mean? How big of a loss is it? We're breaking it down on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by Bryan Brown, football extraordinaire, former host of this podcast too. And Bryan, I'd love to talk about all the excitement for the first media viewing session of spring ball. Get to that in the second segment. Also, Utah women's basketball season comes to a close. But we have to start with the news that Utah has another defensive back in the portal. And this is the second one that's entered too since the portal first portal window kind of even closed, because you had Kenan Johnson a couple weeks ago, and now Sammie Hunter, who a former really good get for this Utah team. You look back at him as a cornerback. He's 5'11", 185-pound guy. This is a guy, even after like the first coach's media availability, Sharif Shaw was talking about he was excited for Sammie Hunter to be in the mix for the nickel spot. So this is definitely a loss for Utah, and I am shocked by the timing of it.
It is a strange time to debut, and thanks for having me on as always, JT. It is a strange time to break that news, right? And I think, as we were talking a little bit about how to discuss this, there's a couple different ways to approach it. One is the impact to the DB room, and you mentioned that Sharif Shaw said that he was in the mix for the nickelback, and so that makes me think, okay, so what's the plan with Smith Snowden? Is he going to bump to the outside? And you mentioned the departure of Kenan Johnson, which I'm not sure that one really was as surprising to me in the sense of, like, he came in really heralded, and I think Utah kind of recruited over the top of him after the ACL injury, or lower leg, right? That's what I should say, lower leg injury. I don't know if it was confirmed ACL or not. Not saying that I'm breaking any news. I just assume every time there is one, and they're out for the year. But I didn't know if he was going to come back in time and really earn a spot, right? Because you had Scooby Davis, you recruited over the top a little bit and gotten some guys in the portal that I think are day one starters in the program. And so Kenan was going to have a uphill battle. So that one made sense to me. This transfer does not make sense as much, because Sammie Hunter was a heralded prospect out of Chandler, Arizona. I believe he was a 3-star prospect.
Yes, he was.
With 24/7 Sports, and I think he was kind of verging on the edge of being a 4-star prospect. And the interesting part about his recruiting kind of track was that he came up to Utah in the UAE Next camp and just balled out, just played incredibly well, and almost immediately after that announced his Utah offer. So, I mean, no surprise there that Utah had some eyes probably, or somebody was feeding them some information, and his recruiting process was just like a slam dunk. And so he felt like one of those guys that was going to come into the program, work his way through it, and end up being a really productive contributing player. And all of a sudden now, in the middle of March, when the window's not even open, by the way, he's announcing he's entering the transfer portal, and he's not even announcing it, right? Breaking the news through Blair Angulo, which makes you think that maybe there are some extracurriculars going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of this. Absolutely. Is, okay, why does a guy like this transfer? You made a number of great points off the air. Like, hey, is this a situation where he doesn't think he's going to get playing time? Which that just seemed weird. Like, and once again, we're just trying to figure this out. Like, it sounded like you were right there. Now, when Coach Shaw was doing his media availability, he threw Sammie Hunter out there. He did say Kwamari Shemwell is poised to be that guy who's the nickel guy. So maybe just did Sammie not love that, I guess. NIL is always something that could be in this sphere. But anyway you slice it, it hurts, because this is a cornerback room that's just lost a lot, Bryan. There's got to be guys like right now, if they do Shemwell at nickel, Snowden, and then you get Scooby Elijah Davis on the outside, like, I like that room, but that's banking on improvement, and you need one of these transfers to hit, whether that's Blake Cotton, the UC Davis transfer, Dawn Sanders, A&M, Rock Caldwell, Gardner City Community College, and I know there were some other guys Coach Shaw mentioned that he liked, but it's a very new look cornerback room.
It is, and you always have to wonder about the potential of moving somebody over from the offensive side of the ball, and I don't want to cause
They're
any
going to move
trauma.
Hunter Andrews. Can he go over there as well?
Yeah,
Since he's
maybe
linebacker, running back, now tight end too. So he's been all over the place.
I mean, Hunter keeps going like that. He might eat his way into playing an offensive line position as well. Which, hey, welcome to the Brethren of the Girth, man. There's no better place to be than in the trenches. But I think Hunter Andrews has better projections than just being an offensive lineman. To your point, though, it seems that we always rob Peter to pay Paul in this school, where you're taking from the offensive side of the ball to feed the defensive side of the ball. And the problem with this one is that it's a depth transfer as much as anything, and Utah has absolutely needed depth over the last few years. Now, Kyle Whittingham's been pretty talkative about the fact that they've really tried to zero in on what's going on with the injuries, and a lot of this falls on Doug Elisaya from the outsider perspective, and I'm telling you, it's not Doug's fault, because it's not like a consistent issue with soft tissue injuries, right? A lot of the injuries that Utah is suffering are overwork injuries. I'm just going to say it out loud. People can dispute it and disagree with me. It doesn't matter to me, but I've talked to enough people that understand, the physical therapy and that side of it to tell me, like, that's really the primary thing that's going on here. And so if that's going to be the case, and that's so much about, I think this leads into a couple different points, right? One, Utah is a very difficult program to be at. And so maybe that's part of what Sammie Hunter's thing was, is he just didn't want to work hard enough to earn his spot on the field. Now, maybe that was Sharif's way of saying, like, hey, like, we still love you. We still, have high hopes for you. I'm shouting you out on day one. And then almost immediately after that, he drops into the transfer, or announces that he's going in the transfer portal, because, again, the window is not open yet, right? Like, that's the weird part about this too. So it's just, to me, it's like, what are some of the reasons that maybe he's going, right? It's either he's just not happy here. Like in the pre-show we talked about Ryan Pepins, a few years ago, just being homesick, and he just randomly bounced out of here. So it's either he's not happy here because he's homesick, or he's not happy here because it's not a fit program-wise. But if that was the case, why wouldn't he have gone into the portal right after the fall season, right? It was a bad season. And so that leads me to some of the other speculations, right? Either the NIL deal wasn't coming through the way that he expected it to, or there's some sort of tampering going on where some other entity has now gotten involved. And I wanted to tirade a little bit on this, like kind of like the silliness of canceling spring games so that people don't steal players. Like, coaches still know where guys are, right? Like, especially high school coaches, and the lifeblood of all of these programs is still recruiting. And high school coaches become great, and especially in a place like Chandler, you draw in players by saying, hey, we're either going to give you playing time or we're going to get you recruiting opportunities. And so any coach worth a salt at the high school level is going to do their best to try and climb the ladder and promote themselves. And so if a college coach comes along and says, hey, do you know of any good DBs that aren't getting any play time? First place you're going to say is, like, my old guy Sammie Hunter at Utah is a really good nickel, might be something worth looking at, right? And then the tentacles come out. And, I think for Utah fans, they've seen it enough, they've experienced it enough to know that, like, it's a real thing that's out there. And I'm not saying that that's what happened, because this conversation's all speculative. I haven't been able to figure out what it is, and I've asked a few different people, but it is an interesting conundrum, and the timing of it is really fascinating too.
It's 1,000% fascinating, and when the timing is like this, anything is on the table. But one thing that's really exciting is we're going to get to see these guys, the media at least will, I should say, because spring ball viewing portion is coming up later today. So we are going to be walking through what we are looking for in the reports that come out about that first viewing session, and just what to expect in week 2 of spring ball in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week on Locked On College Basketball, our experts are picking one team that stands apart from the top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets. These guys showcase their strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's clear-cut Armada Team of the Week is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Despite losing the first 5 SEC games, Coach Cal's Hogs fought their way through the most rugged conference in college basketball to not only make the NCAA tournament, but knock off the back-to-back national champions and Hall of Fame coaches en route to Sweet 16. They accomplished all this without second leading scorer Boogie Fland for most of SEC play, and without leading scorer and rebound Adu Thero so far in the NCAA tournament. Make sure you guys head over and check out the Armada's great selection today, because when it comes to Nissan Armada, they say go further and conquer, and that's exactly what you can do, like the Arkansas Razorbacks were also able to do. It's clear that our team of the week is out here to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, Pathfinder, and go find your next big adventure. You can shop NissanUSA.com today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Post District. Discover Post District, home to 4 of Salt Lake's newest and most stylish apartment buildings. They're Register, Post House North, Post House South, and the 801 Flats. Each residence offers its own unique take on luxury urban living, with features like waterfall kitchen islands, floor-to-ceiling windows, vaulted ceilings, and spacious patio walk-in closets. Enjoy premium amenities, including the city's largest residential gym, a year-round pool, golf simulator, massive TV wall for sports watch parties, and more, all anchored by a one-of-a-kind community. Step outside and find yourself immersed in Salt Lake's hottest dining and nightlife scene with award-winning spots like Urban Hill, Mencho Ramen, Level Crossing, Melancholy Wine Bar, and Sunday's Best just steps away. Whether you're looking for a studio 1, 2, 3 bedroom or penthouse, you can find your perfect home today. Visit liveatpost.com or call 801-590-6247. Make sure you mention this ad too for an exclusive incentive. Once again, you can visit liveatpost.com or call 801-590-6247. Mention this ad for that exclusive incentive. If you want to find Salt Lake's newest and most stylish apartment buildings, you need to head over to Post District today. Where Sammie ends up at will probably be a good indicator about like, hey, was NIL involved? Or was this just a situation where he's like, you know what, maybe I didn't love it at Utah. Maybe I just want to go play closer to home. Maybe it's somewhere else where feels like he can get immediate playing time. Lots of things on the table, all of them just unfortunate for Utah because any way you slice it, you lose a depth piece at corner. So like we mentioned, Utah still has guys in there we like. You have returning starters from last year, Smith Snow and Elijah Davis, but you need a guy, whether that's Shemwell to step up, Rock Caldwell, also Don Saunders, like Blake Cotton. Like this is why you got 3 cornerbacks in the transfer portal now. So you got to hit on them if you want to be a team in the Big 12 to compete next year, because you got to have good corner play at Utah. We know that's a big part of this too. Brian, did you want to add something quick?
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit in this one. If you had to project who the starting corners were next year, who would you project?
Yeah, I've done this before. I still keep Smith in the slot. Smith Snowden, please play this. Prove me wrong. Go on the outside, crush it. He's 5'10". I have a little bit concerns. He got beaten some of those one-on-one situations last year on the outside, which is like, hey, the other guy's bigger than him. If they put him outside in Sharif Shaw, Morgan Scalley, we absolutely trust, but I have concerns there. I'd keep him at the slot. I liked what I saw from Elijah Davis. He can go on the outside. Blake Cotton got a lot of reps at UC Davis. I feel like he's ready for this transition. Those are my top 3 guys. You thinking anyone else?
No, I think you nailed it, and I think the advantage you have is Elijah Davis, a guy that's been in the program, right? Kind of took his lumps last year, so you would expect some improvement from him. Don Saunders is a guy that I think the University of Utah highly prioritized.
Yes.
The second that they saw him enter in the portal, so I would pencil him as a potential starter. I do like the size that Blake Cotton brings to the position at 2. He's listed at 6'2", 190, and Utah just loves those big physical corners, and I think you kind of understood why. Watching last year, because even though the Big 12 is penciled in as the pass-happy league, it was the teams with the running game that really rose to the top and showed out throughout the course of that season. So, I think there is plenty of depth there. I'm curious what Rock Caldwell can do. Junior college transfer, that's a tough jump.
It is.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there's lots of potential with this group. How's it going to shake out? And we mentioned the top 3. You need 4. Last year, Cameron Calhoun, Zamiah Vaughn, Smith Snowden, and then you get Scooby Davis. So those were your top 4. They all played a ton for this team. Kenan Johnson was supposed to be in that too. So really need 4 to 5 there. I think Utah has the guys. Brian, you and I have both had the opportunity before to go up and watch these first practices, the first look we get at the 2025 Utah football team. That's what we're going to see from the media. They're going to be tweeting things out. When it comes to the biggest thing I want to see, I'm simple. It really is how Devon Dampier looked in the live portion, because that's usually what we get to see, how he's going to go out there, perform, who are the best targets he's throwing to. I want to see all things Utah pass game, because that's what has me really excited about this team. Devon Dampier, Utah's going to go as far as Dampier can take them at quarterback, I feel like. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing those first reports trickle out. What do you have your eye on?
Yeah, for me, it's always, first and foremost, I want to see how the offensive line looks together. And the earlier reports are that this is a group that the experience of playing together through multiple seasons and for a full year in the Big 12 last year has really helped them age well. There's a ton of talent on this offensive unit. I always start out with Spencer Fano, but Caleb Blomu, a ton of returning experience with Jaron Kump, and then I think you saw some emergence from Tanoa Tongiai last year, and then how Michael Mokofisi fits into the equation with the amount of experience that he has as a starter as well. There's a lot of potential for this group, and realistically, you talk about the offense will go as Devon Dampier does. The Devon Dampier will have to work with an offensive line in order to accomplish what he needs to accomplish, and the easier they can make his job, the more prolific he can be as a playmaker.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're absolutely right. You raise an interesting point with the offensive line. I've said before, I like a lot of things about the Utah offensive line. Obviously, one of the best tackle duos in the country, Spencer Fano, Caleb Blomu. I, from last year's team, have a lot of questions about the interior offensive line. Mokofisi's really good. I like him there. Tongai, I thought up and down. And Jaron Kump's another guy. So I do have questions, especially with Kump. Like we've been doing this for a couple of years now. We've been trying to make Jaron Kump happen. He's obviously a captain, a leader on this team. I think if he wins a spot, I'm happy for him. But I have questions about the offensive line still. You are someone, when it comes to playing the trenches, I respect your opinion as much as anyone. So I want to know, do you feel confident like we are going to see improvement there? Because the lack of a run game last year wasn't just on bad quarterback play. Guys were not finishing blocks.
There is a part of that, and I think some inexperience and new conference foes plays into that to some degree. But I think when I look at it from a perspective of what's the most important thing, it's talent in the pipeline, and Utah has a lot of talent on that offensive line unit. Jaron Kump's a guy that's really taken his lumps. He's a fantastic athlete. Prototypical size for the position, but he's struggled to find a position, and I think with a third year playing center, he should finally be able to be a guy that they can count on every single play. And if he can set that tone, then I think that helps a ton for guys like Spencer Fano and Caleb Blomu, especially for the guards. And I think the other thing too is that it was still for the most part, a relatively new group of guys working together. Entirely brand new left side of the offensive line, and
position change for Tongai, tackle to guard.
Which should have happened a long time ago, and I think that's, if ever I was to put together a motto for the Utah offensive line, it's guards playing tackles. And we finally have some guys that are athletic enough to play the tackle position. And you saw what happened with Spencer Fano. He was rated the highest graded tackle by PFF. And so the talent is there. What I always am curious about, and I think Fano, to his credit, will be coming into his third year as a starter. I think he's become more comfortable as a leader. And I think that's a huge evolution within the program. They've added depth. Isaiah Garcia is a guy that really struggled with injury last year, but I expect him to get some rotations and to push some guys. That's the other part of it too, right? How much are the guys underneath pushing the guys that are ahead? And so it's about developing depth, but also, to your point, like really sharpening the stone in a sense, or sharpening the tip of the spear, right? As Jim Harbaugh likes to call it. Utah's really got to sharpen up that spear so that when they go out and play every single game, it's no questions, that group is going to be consistent 100% throughout the course of the game. It's been a long time since Utah's had a group that has played together as much as this group has.
That's true. To get all five guys back is massive.
I can't remember the last time it's happened, and I probably should have done some research on it.
No, I agree. And that's what leaves me optimistic. And you know what else? If Jaron Kump wins it, great. If Ike Garcia could factor into this somehow, four-star offensive lineman, Corner Canyon a couple years ago. So there's other guys in this room that I think should push those top guys. So we'll see how that group shakes out as well, Brian. And another group I'm very excited to hear about is, we talked about the offense a lot. I mentioned the wide receivers. I'm immensely excited to see, is Otto Tia's favorite target? Is it still going to be Ryan Davis from the New Mexico days? Zacharias Williams broke out in the final game. We haven't gotten to see more of him. He's going to be one of the first three wide receivers out there. How about on the defensive side of the ball? What is the best defensive line this team's going to come up with? Logan Fano's back. Everyone else, I feel like, and D tackle, we think we know who the guys are, but that's because this team lost a lot. So how does that take shape? There's a lot of fun position battles going on, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the depth units shake out here, Brian.
Yeah, and I think one of the downsides is that you and I'm not a media member anymore, so you're out of state, so you're doing your thing with Catawba. We don't actually get to sit there and watch it, and that's one of those things that I always loved about going up to practice, was seeing how the group works together. Seeing what guys are taking leadership roles, and being able to watch the little things that that don't necessarily dictate one way or another, but can give you a clue. I think last year Landon King really struggled on a variety of fronts. There were health issues, and I think he was in a bad headspace when the season started. And as he worked through the season, you saw him improve and his play improve.
Yep.
I think he's going to be a guy that now that all that stuff is settled and he's recommitted himself to the program. You haven't heard a peep really out of anybody up on the hill this year. It's been all quiet on the Western Front, except for, when Whittingham does his interviews. And I think that's by design. They've really shut everybody out and tried to fix whatever was wrong from last year. And I think it's a really, as former media member, I hate it, but also I think it's a really savvy move by Kyle Whittingham because they really did need to do some work and rebuild the culture. And I think Landon is one of those guys that brings culture with him wherever he goes because he has such a great attitude. He's such a great player. He has so much potential. And I do see this offense being really prolific for him. And he's got a quarterback, and this is no knock on anybody who played quarterback for the University of Utah last year, but he's got a quarterback in Devon Dampier that can put the ball on a dime, and a 6'5" target with triple XL hands is going to absolutely love that.
Hey, you and I have that in common. We're still in the Landon King fan club. I think he can have a huge year. I know we've heard Jason Beck's offense doesn't prioritize tight ends as much, but they prioritize talented playmakers, and that's 1,000% what Landon King is the chance to be. So expect him to be a guy, and going to be fun to see what we all hear and what comes out from spring ball. We'll be monitoring it on tomorrow's show. Unfortunately, we cannot monitor Utah women's basketball anymore. Their season came to a disappointing end early in the first round against Indiana. I'm going to talk about the year that was for the Utah women's basketball program in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Supply House. Supply House has you covered because with Supply House, one thing I absolutely love is that you can get the supplies you need from the site made from skilled trades. Supply House, whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Do you need help with any order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. So you'll always talk to a real person. And for trading pros, look for the extra edge. Their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a deduction, phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, you can use that promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com today. You check out everything Supply House has to offer by using that promo code SH5, 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. You can head over there right now. There's nothing like March Madness. Men's team didn't get to be involved in it, unfortunately, Brian, but the women's basketball team was. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of upsets in women's basketball tournament. It's very different than the men's. Some just interesting I've noticed, but unfortunately, when you get an 8-9 matchup, that isn't really much of an upset. And Utah did fall to the Hoosiers here, 76-68. It was tough. Unfortunately, when you let a team go over 25 points in a quarter, it's going to be hard to come back from that, and that's what happened. I mean, Utah had 10 more shots than Indiana too, but that's and they got a ton of offensive rebounds. They had 7 offensive rebounds to Indiana's 1, but they still wound up losing the game. So really tough pill to swallow for this team, and credit the Hoosiers for getting it done. Gianna Neepkins did all she could, 9 of 18 from the field in total, 24 points, and Maya Torre did her best, but just not enough around. A tough outcome here, but considering everything that happened, losing your coach right before the season starts in just a wild sequence of events, Gavin Peterson taking over, I thought he did a really good job. Tough to go out in the first round, but just first year in the Big 12, make the tournament still. It's hats off to this team for what they were able to do. Just disappointing to see them go home early. Brian, your mic is muted, my friend.
Someday we'll get through an entire podcast where that is not the case, but you're coming off of season 2 where you're replacing one of the greatest basketball players in Utah women's basketball history, and so with that, there's always questions surrounding the program. But I thought it was, to quote a former Utah basketball coach from an era that maybe people aren't as fond of as the one that's returning now, ball didn't go in the hoop. And that was the bottom line for Utah there in the third quarter. They just couldn't hit enough shots, and Indiana was able to pull away, and they put together a valiant effort to try and close in the fourth quarter, but just weren't able to get it done. And you mentioned it, like, new conference, new head coach. This team did a lot this year. I don't think anybody will ever forget the buzzer beating win against BYU. So a lot of good things to hang the hat on. But I think the bigger news for me is that this has become a program where perennial excellence has become the norm. And that's really cool, because I think a lot of people probably expected Utah to win this game, whatever prognosticators there on women's college basketball. It didn't work out for them, but that's the level that this program has risen to. And to me, that's really, really special, because, when I was at the University of Utah, the women's basketball team didn't get near the attention that it does now. And that's not to say that it wasn't great. There are some legends that have come through that program.
And also, just special hats off, speaking of legends, Gianna Neepkins, Jenna Johnson, Kennedy McQueen, Ines Vieira played in their final games. They have been and I believe played in their final game, most of them. It's with the eligibility and everything now, sometimes you lose track. But they have been so phenomenal, instrumental. Especially Neepkins and Jenna Johnson and McQueen and Vieira as well. They had huge roles on this team as freshmen that made a run to the Pac-12 championship game, ended up losing to Oregon back in 21. Like, the turnaround of Utah women's basketball started with the freshman class. Still remember Gianna Neepkins, Jenna Johnson, both from Minnesota. So those group of players that will not soon be forgotten for the legendary run. They helped this team go on, Brian. And like you said, it feels like Coach Peterson's done a good job. I feel like this is a team that is going to consistently be in the NCAA tournament. Could they miss it a year? Of course. But I would be surprised if this team goes 2 years in a row ever missing an NCAA tournament. So hats off to the players as well as the coaches for elevating Utah women's basketball.
100%. I think you mentioned that just the litany of players on this roster that Utah has had over the last few years, and obviously everybody zooms in on the stars like Kennedy McQueen, Gianna Neepkins, but you mentioned Ines Vieira. I mean, she has been an absolute pest.
Yeah.
Just an absolute hustle player. Just one of those people that makes plays because of effort and energy. And those are the kind of players that you absolutely love to have on your team, because they make a huge difference. And sometimes they turn those teeter-totter games into victories because of that. Those are players that you're really going to miss. And I think production's replaceable. People are not. That's the part about this team that's going to stand out for me. There are going to be new stars that emerge and come into the program and buy in and do their thing, but you're just going to miss the game and the effort that players like Gianna and Kennedy and Ines and some of the others bring to the floor every night. And it's just it's part of the evolution that makes college sports great. And it's kind of the sad part of the NIL area is that you don't see players go through the program through their fullness for a full career as much anymore, at least in the men's sports. Hopefully the women are going to carry the banner for us as they so often do in this world.
That's the goal. Hey, you always carry the banner anytime you come on this show, my friend. So thank you so much for making the time. Make sure you guys head over, give Brian a follow on X. Brian, you're the man. Thanks for making the time to hop on.
Always happy to be here. Thank you, man.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Tomorrow's show, we'll be talking all of the latest Utah spring ball, the media viewing session. Hoping to have someone on. The plan is to do that who was in attendance, so that will be the goal tomorrow. We'll be talking about what we saw, what happened. Hope you'll join us then. Utah spring football underway. We'll be covering on tomorrow's Locked On Utes.